Now, if you should go ahead, we have the field force. What are field forces? Field in science is not a field where you play football. A field in science is any particular region. Is any particular region where some factors of scientific phenomena takes place. When I say scientific phenomena, it could be electron, it could be electric movement or electric charges. When you have a place where electric charges are moving here and there, that particular region is what we call electric field. When you have a region where magnetic occurrence, when I say magnetic occurrence, there are a lot of magnet taking place. I mean, there are a lot of magnetic flux. That's what we call magnetic flux. Let me give you the diagram. You have your magnet here. Let's say this is the North Pole. Now you have another magnet here faced with it. Now if this is to be the South Pole, they definitely attract. Abi, that's the law of magnet. Like charges repel, while unlike charges attract. Now this is north and this is south. They are both unlike charges, so definitely they attract. Meaning that this particular field where that attraction takes place is what we call magnetic field. Do you understand the meaning of field now? So when you now say force field, forces field, or you can say field force. Field force are what? Are forces that are experienced in in magnetic or in field environment. Do you understand? They said these are forces whose sources don't require contact with the body which they are applied. Do you understand? You can define it in two ways. You can say these are forces experienced in in a particular field. Let's say magnetic or electrical. Do you understand? So when those type of forces exist, they don't bring about contact. It's only in contact forces where you have your sliding, your friction, your push, your pull, where your contact or forces will take you. But in this case, there is no contact, but forces exhibit itself. So that's the two major differences between field and contact force. Now, examples of these field forces, we have what we call gravity. Now, on Earth, on planet Earth, we all know that gravity exists. When you say gravity, any particular body that goes up must come down. Meaning that if this is planet Earth, if you are standing here, for as long as you are on this Earth, if you jump up, you always come down. Logically, people will believe that, okay, when the body goes up, why is it always coming down? But if you go to space, you have left this atmosphere. There's what we call atmosphere. There's what we call stratosphere. Immediately you leave the stratosphere and go into the space, there is nothing like a object falling. You will be floating in air, meaning that at that particular region, there is no attractive force taking place. As you have left this gravitational field, on this particular Earth, we have what we call gravitational field. What does that mean? It means that gravity takes place. It means that any particular object that goes up on this Earth must always come down. Meaning that this Earth is attracting any particular body that goes up. Do you understand now? So at this region is a gravitational field. So this region too is what? Is a field. So at that junction now, there is no contact or anything needed. Force will take place. So another one is your electric field or electrical force. Then I've analyzed all that. This is your your magnetic force at this particular region where, and now let me put this in. Now, if you look at, although it's invisible, you can't see it, but there are some elements taking place that are actually allowing those magnets to stick together. Those particular elements is what we call magnetic flux. Magnetic flux. You can't see them, but they exist. They are the one that tends to draw the two magnets and make them collide. Now, those particular forces, there is now a force that they exhibit, and that force is what we call magnetic force. You can see the difference now. There is magnetic flux, there is magnetic force. Magnetic force is the what? Is the work done, as in the eventual linking force that actually makes this thing to come together. Why the wave, let me use wave. The wave of what? The wave of force which they now use for them to come together is what we call magnetic flux. magnetic flux. So if you proceed, if you do your more research, you'll be able to understand that magnetic flux and magnetic force work together for what? This magnetic field to be exhibited. So let's proceed. Now, the next thing we need to go into is friction. But friction really has nothing much involved. Now, what we just need to look at is friction is what are the advantages of friction. But before we go into that, what is friction itself? Friction is just a phenomenon whereby two particular objects does not drag smoothly on each other. That is restriction. When I say restriction, that's restriction of a what? Of a body to what? To move smoothly. When I say restriction, smoothly on a what? On a particular surface. As I'm standing here, I'm being able to stand firm on this particular surface because what? There is friction between my leg and the ground. That friction is just the inability or the less smooth when two surfaces comes together and both surfaces are not that smooth. Now, if those surfaces are to move relatively with each other, let's say you have a surface this way and you have a surface. If this surface is going this way and now it will be moving that way, if these two contact is said to be too smooth, do you understand? There will never be what? A work done. But if this surface is not as smooth as you feel, now there will be what? Okay, let me give you another analysis. If I want to put my 2 palms together, now if I want to move them towards each other, if you can practice it now on yourself, you realize that those two surfaces will be what? Making a noise. And as they make a noise, if you continuously move them towards each other, you realize that your 2 palms will get hot. Now, that particular phenomenon exhibited there is what we call what? Friction. It does not allow what? Movement relatively to two surfaces to be what? Super smooth. That's just the idea behind friction. And friction has helped a long way in our day-to-day life. Now, what are the advantages? It makes walking possible. I can easily walk from here to there because the bottom of my legs and the floor are not smoothing towards each other. Meaning that the crack or the drag between the surface of the leg and the floor is actually what being experienced. That is why I can ably stand here without me sliding or falling to the ground. Another advantage of friction is that we cannot fix a nail on a wood or wall if there is no what? Friction. Meaning that if I'm to put a nail on any surface, let's say for instance, okay, look at this board now, the board here is super smooth. For me to fix in a nail on this board, if maybe I put it and I hit my hammer on it, it will definitely change location of the particular point where I put it. Why? Because friction do not exist. But if friction exists in this particular surface, that is, it has a rough surface, maybe I put my nail, I'll definitely get to where I'm going. Another good advantage of friction is that a horse cannot pull a cart unless friction gives him a secure foothold. So those are the little examples of what? A good friction. Another one, friction provides the trust needed by this case. Look at those diagrams I put there, just for you to understand the idea behind friction. Now, what are the disadvantages of friction? Is that friction produces heat in various parts of the machine. Those are the things you need to know. Okay, let me give you another analogy. So it's due to friction. If you have seen your blender before, you know some blender looks exactly like this. Now, if you have this blender and you have the controller down here, this is where you have your rotary. That's what we call rotary region. Do you understand? The electrical part. Here is the mechanical part where the grinding takes place. Where you have the spindle. The spindle is somewhere here that actually grinds the pepper. So this is the electrical part and this is the mechanical part. If you pour your pepper inside here, if this particular surface, if the surface at which the blade that is to cut those pepper into pieces, if that blade is to be super smooth, it's not sharpened, it's just smooth, definitely it won't cut anything. So for you to have friction, for this blade to cut your pepper or whatever you are going to grind, there has to be what? Friction. Do you understand? So those are the very good advantages of friction. But if you proceed in this particular activity for hours, definitely inside this particular container there will be heat to be generated, and those are one of the disadvantages of friction. Meaning that if you want to exhibit this type of practices, you have to give this machine or this grinding machine a while to rest. You allow some 20 or 30 minutes interval before you grind any other. But because if you continue this way, I give you 3 to 4, 5 hours, this particular machine can blow off. Why? Because it experiences heat, and when the heat is being experienced, it will react to the electrical side and it just blow off. So those are the disadvantages of friction. Another one is what? Due to friction, we have to exert more power in machine. Do you understand? For you to actually do anything, this is the electrical part. Now if it's the mechanical one if it's the manual one where you have to wind your grinder, there is this manual pepper grinder where you have to wind. So if you must wind to actually make your pepper to grind, you have to do more work. Do you understand? So that's why they say you have to exert more power. It possesses motion. It opposes motion. If you have your friction opposes motion. If things that you're expected to move on at a very long distance, it opposes motion. Friction will always want to drag it back. Why? Because the surface at which they are using to contact is not smooth. Another one is that it produces noise in machine. If you have your machine, I was saying it the other time, I said if you put your two palms together, due to friction, you have noise being produced. So also in your grinding machine, so also in the physical ones, it produces noise. Another disadvantage is that engines of automobile consume more fuel, which leads to loss of money. So those are the disadvantages of friction. Now let's look at how do we reduce friction. These are the very simple way of reducing friction. If you have your engine, whether it's the normal manual domestic engine at home